Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem amma ba'd fa'auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Program Understanding Quran, the Word of Allah, and me, Dr. Kaisser. Today we'll be starting with Juz 6, and we are on Surah An-Nisa, which we started, which we did even, we are covering in the last two Juz as well. The verse is 148. لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من قول إلا من ظلم وكان الله سميعا عليما. Allah does not like evil words to be uttered except by someone who is truly wronged. Allah hears all and knows all. Over here, what we are trying to understand is the concept when we should be voicing ourselves, where we should be going, because yesterday we talked about going to the right authority. So there are times when you're trying to approach someone and they're not responding to your message. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah does not like evil words. Let's try to see what are these evil words. Fights, taunts, sarcasm, abuse, backbiting, slandering, gossip, lying. We have a whole list of things that we should be looking into. Second important concept that we learn over here is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want us, or Islam doesn't teach us to bottle up our emotions and then ultimately explode. We are supposed to be talking to the people, the right authority, wherever it is required. And that is why in the next verse we find out it is said, إن تبدوا خيرا وتخفوه أو تعفوا عن سوء فإن الله كان عفوا قديرا. If you do good deeds openly or in private or forgive an evil, then surely Allah is pardoning and powerful. Amazingly, what we find out again over here is the concept of forgiveness. We do understand in our religion, Islam says if there is a criminal, if somebody has wronged, if somebody has done some zulm, then yes, you can, the justice system tells us that you can hold them accountable for that. But the level of forgiveness or the standard of forgiveness in our religion is very high. Let us try to understand what is this forgiveness, because many a times when we talk to people and tell them forgive a person, forgive a certain situation, even forgive your own self, what they say is, it is so hard for me to let go of this scenario, this person, or whatever this situation which came up in my life. So forgiveness is basically an intentional and voluntary process by which what you are trying to do is you are having an attitude where you change your attitude and feelings toward a certain situation or an offense. So forgiveness does not automatically mean that you're reconciling with someone. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you're exposing yourself in a relationship which can harm you. Basically, what you're doing is you are having a healthy way forward in which you are not letting this bitterness and anger and these negativity or negative emotions which are inside you perturb your emotional well-being. So it is not about letting someone off the hook, but this is basically about moving on in your life. And this is a very, very important and healthy trait that we should be looking into. Then we move on from verse number 153 onwards, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is again reminding us about the crimes of the Jews, how they had been messing up, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed them with the blessings, and they never followed the commandments that were given to them by the Creator. Ultimately, we come down to this verse number 157, which is very important according to the belief system that the Muslims have. It says, talking about Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus, the son of Mary, and it is said over here, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ. Isa alayhi salam, he was not killed, and he was not crucified, but they thought they did it. Now this is an important concept in Islam that we have to understand, and we have to live with it. We have to strongly believe in it. We do understand that there was a man who resembled Isa alayhi salam, and he was apparently crucified. And there are people who were divided even at that time, thinking, some of them thought that yes, probably Isa alayhi salam is crucified, but many of them, they didn't believe even in those times. But we understand, and what we believe in is that he will descend at the time, at the end of the times, when he will kill the pig, he will break the cross, and he is going to rule according to the principles of Islam. And There are 70 plus ahadith which talk about his return. And when he'll return, he will be on Islam. And all the religions, all the divine religions are going to merge down at the same level. And the practice all over the world is going to be Islam. That is the submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Something that I have always been talking about, the latest version of the divine message that is coming from the Creator. That is where people are going to practice. Again, in verse number 162, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about ar-rasikhuna fil ilm. The people who are well grounded in their knowledge are the ones who are going to turn toward this message of revelation, who are going to look into what the Prophet is bringing up and also understand that message. So let us try to understand what is this rasikhuna fil ilm. How can we be part of this group who are well grounded in knowledge? Basically, in today's time, we call it crystallized intelligence. This is an information that you acquire in your life, and yes, you match it with your IQ batteries. So to have this kind of knowledge, what you have to have is openness to learn through education, through different resources, and also through different experiences. And this has to sort of help you in your intellectual curiosity as well as the interest in learning. And similarly, you have to invest your time and cutting off a lot of social activities that people are indulged in. So when I talk about openness, I come across people, especially youngsters, who say, well, I'm open to listening to all the divine messages, and then I will choose which one I want to be in, which domain I want to follow. Now, the point that we have to understand over here is there is no match between the Creator and the creation. The message that is coming to us from the Creator has the epitome level and importance for all the humanity. So the first thing that I would say is, if you want to understand other divine messages, other religion, this is what the experts in comparative religion would do. They first understand the message, the actual divine scripture that is there with us. And then after they understand Quran, as we are trying to do it this Ramadan, then they move on to the rest of the messages and they can make the comparison. One of the scholars said very interesting thing about rasikhuna fil ilm, the people who are well grounded in the knowledge. The four things that he said, that the relationship he has with his Lord is based on taqwa, that is Allah consciousness. The relationship this person who is well grounded in knowledge with humanity, with the people around him, is based on being humble in himself and having compassion and empathy. The relationship this person has towards materialism is indifference. And then the relationship this person who is well grounded in knowledge, which he has with his own nafs, his own desires, is constant struggle. This is like such a beautiful aspect. So taqwa, becoming indifferent to materialism, having humility, and at the same time constantly struggling with our desires. This is an important aspect which we try to practice, and inshallah we'll be seeing results of that. Now we'll move on after that, and there are verses which are talking about the roles of the prophets. And in this we find out verse number 165. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the roles of the Prophet, which says, رُسُلٌ مُبَشِّرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ لِأَلَّا يَكُونَ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَى اللَّهِ حُجَّةٌ بَعْدَ الرُّسُلِ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَزِيزًا حَكِيمًا. All these Rasuls, all the prophets, conveyed good news to mankind and admonished them so that after conveying the message through the Rasuls, people should have no excuse to plead against Allah. And Allah is mighty and He is wise. So over here, the balanced approach in conveying the message has been talked about. What was the methodology that was adopted by the prophets? Because now there is going to be no more prophet coming in this world. So our approach has to be, it is our responsibility now to convey this message, understand this message, and then convey it to the people around us. So two elements have been described over here. Mubashirin wa munzirin. Mubashirin, when what you do is you give glad tidings, and munzirin when you admonish. So what do? This is something like when you say have tough love. Like you are kind, you are working for the welfare of a certain person, but you enforce certain constraints as well so that they learn to be responsible for their life. And in this, what we understand is there is no criticism, there are no discouraging remarks. Many a times when people are trying to convey it to their family members, or even as a teacher you're sitting and you're trying to convey something to your students, we become a little harsh. We go a lot into guiding them towards halal and haram. And when we are doing this guidance, sometimes other people, they get offended. So this kind of this attitude, the balance that we learn between mubashireen and munzireen is when we see some person around us making unwise choice, and we know that this person is going on a dangerous path in life, that become very challenging for us. Yes, that person might feel little offense, a temporary offense, but ultimately, if because of the guidance that is being conveyed to that person, then the behavioral change takes place, that's when this person cherishes this balance of how the things are being conveyed. So whenever you're talking to someone, try this out. And for that, we say that there has to be a 1 minute approach. When what you do is how you convey the message. In 20 seconds, what you do is you express your emotion. In another 20 seconds, you talk about your feeling or your expectation, what it should be like. And in the next 20 seconds, you give out the approach towards the problem that you saw. Let me give you a little example on that. Your child comes up to you and throws a tantrum on something, especially the teenagers, that's what they do. And you do not simply approve of that action. So the first thing you do is 20 seconds. Maybe you release one statement where you say, I don't approve of this behavior. That's it, period, stop. Then next 20 seconds, you talk about your own feeling. You say, I'm really upset about how this happened, period, stop. 20 seconds have gone by. And the last 20 seconds, you say, maybe next time this situation erupts, this is how you can resolve it. That's it. And you can keep giving similar messages all over the day. Experts say that if our message goes beyond 1.5 to 2 minutes, the other person gets into defensive mode. And if it goes beyond 3 to 4 minutes, that's when the other person has a list of his own defensive mechanism coming to the rescue, and he knows he has his own logical statements which he starts releasing. And that is why many a times when we are talking to our spouses or we're talking to our near and dear ones and trying to explain something out of this desperation that they listen to something which is a sound advice, they're not ready for that. So learn from this verse, go over it, and this was the beautiful combination that the balance that the prophets had. So we move on, and again, since we're talking about the prophets and how they conveyed the message, and even the people, the experts in their field, over here we find out that in verse number 171, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, Ya ayyuhal kitab, O people of the book, la taghlu fi dinikum, do not transgress the limits of your religion, wala taqulu alallahi illa al-haq, and speak nothing but truth about Allah. Over here, another terminology has been introduced, and that is known as ghuluf. What is this ghuluf? We need to understand that. This is something that where you are either debasing something or you are exaggerating a certain concept. Now, many times when we are talking about the Quran and we're talking about spirituality, Islam, and we are making a religious talk, it's like a drawing room talk where we have actually never opened Quran, actually never studied Quran with a scholar, with an expert, but we go by, I think, I don't think so, I don't think it's there in Quran. And sometimes I have actually seen people say, oh, it's in Quran, quote unquote, but it is not actually quote unquote as it has been given out in Quran. Or sometimes they come across a message from Quran and they say, I don't think so, this is how it means. Well, for us, the criterion is let's not exaggerate or let's not debase. What do we do? Where do we find the answers? Maybe even if we're going to an expert, what if he is also doing something like that? You have to look at how the Prophet ﷺ adopted in his life, how he conveyed on the same message to the companions around him. And we find there were people around him who were expert in this thing. We find out about one of the companions who said that if you tell me about any verse from Quran, I can tell you where it was revealed and what was the background of it, and what is the tafsir or the elaboration of these verses. So subhanallah, we have many people around from those times, and all their work has been preserved, and that's where we can safeguard ourselves from ghuluv. And that is why the next concept which comes immediately after that is wala taqulu thalasa, and do not say Trinity, because Trinity is also a form of ghuluv in which we exaggerate a status of a person, of a prophet. Many times we would come across people who would be doing that, exaggerating the status of the prophet. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called himself Abd. I am a messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm his slave, and I am in his obedience. And all the prophets also conveyed the message. But yes, he had a status where he is Rahmatul lil Alameen, he is Khatamun Nabiyyin. But apart from that, we should be keeping his status as Allah has described in Quran. Because beyond that, that's where the concept where you exaggerate the status, there comes this thing like Trinity. So personality worship and then swaying in different boundaries about the status of someone has been something where we have been warned about over here. And that is why in verse number 174, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, Ya ayyuhan nas. Again, the address is to the whole mankind. And what the mankind has been told, قَدْ جَاءَكُمْ بُرْحَانٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكُمْ نُورًا مُبِينًا. O mankind, there has come to you convincing proof of truth from your Rabb, and we have sent to you a glorious light. Now, Quran is a light. Quran is something which is unbiased, which gives us the facts, which tells us what are the different things in life where we should be understanding, we should be having a deeper comprehension. So the Quran, this verse, this surah, Surah Nisa, it finishes off over here in Juz 6. And now we move on to another amazing surah, and this is Surah Al-Maida. Surah Al-Maida is a surah which has been revealed in the later period when the Muslims were victorious. This was like the post-Hudaybiyah period. You know, to understand Quran, you need to also side by side study the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and different events which were around him. Many a times I've heard people say, probably Quran is not, na'uzubillah, applicable in these times. This is when you have not studied Seerah properly, you have not analyzed the issues that existed over there and tried to then also make a comparison of how we are facing similar challenges. So the post-Hudaybiyan period was the time when Surah Al-Maida was revealed, and this was the time when Muslims were in the state of power, and this was the time when the Prophet ﷺ was sending out letters to different delegations, inviting them towards Islam. And this is a surah which starts by telling us about our boundary now, about the concept of halal and haram, about where to draw a line. And the surah begins by, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, awfu bil uqud. O believers, fulfill your contract, which are your obligations. Now, over here we find out that in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has addressed the believers by saying, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, O believers, about 88 times. And out of that, 16 times are in this surah. Because when you are heading towards victory, that's when you have to have a constant reminder about your covenants, about your promises, and again, as I always say, where to draw the line. So over here we are talking about the bil uqud, our fulfilling our promises and covenants. Now we need to understand, we need to have a lot of clarity on this thing. These promises and covenants which are obligatory, they could be between a person to person, they could be between one nation to another nation, they could be between Muslim to another Muslim, or they could be between a Muslim to a non-Muslim. I would especially like to highlight over here the concept of a covenant between a Muslim and a non-Muslim. Why many a times I have come across this concept that I can cheat on a non-Muslim. If I'm living in a non-Muslim country, I don't have to pay the taxes, or I don't have to follow their rules, which are the right rules, which are not leading us towards anything which contradict according to our religion. So remember that when we're dealing with the non-Muslims, when we are living in their country or in their domain, then we have to follow those rules as well. Why people sometimes are not able to follow their promises or fulfill their promises? Basically what happens is that when we are totally engaged in one activity after the other, we have a burnout, and because of that what we do is we go back to our comfort zone, and our comfort zone is loaded with a lot of temptation. And so some of these temptations tell us chill, relax, you don't have to follow everything, and then it takes us back in the victories we had in the past, that see, I fulfilled this promise and that promise, so if I'm not fulfilling this one or two promises, it doesn't make any difference. So over here we need to tell ourselves how we can be confirm and consistent in fulfilling our promises. We need to reward ourselves at different intervals. At the same time, what we need to do is we need to direct our energies towards positivity. The more positive you are, the more productive you are, the more you will be able to sustain your promises. And yes, whenever you're making a promise or a covenant, you have to weigh and balance that if you are on the right track. But having said that, towards the end of this verse number 2, we find out another important concept which goes hand in hand for fulfilling these promises has been mentioned, which is وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Cooperate with one another in righteousness and piety, and do not cooperate in sin and transgression. So important rule is have positive synergy, because positive synergy means 2 plus 2 is 5. If you have a negative synergy, you are trying to cooperate with someone in something which is evil, something which is misleading, it will be 2 plus 2 is equal to 3, which will be a negative synergy. So we only cooperate with people where we share the vision, right goals, right value system, true leadership, there is trust, and there is positive environment. And until we have all that, it becomes very difficult to practice these covenants. Then there is a very important verse, but we will take a short break over here and then we'll move on and talk about it. So let's take a break. Welcome back. We are on juz number 6, and this is Surah Al-Maida. And in this, there is a verse that I want to talk about. The Jews, they came to Umar Radhiyallahu Anhu, and they said that there's a verse in your book, and if it was given to us, we would have rejuvenated, and we would have made it a day of celebration for us. Are you aware of that verse? That is in Surah Al-Maida, where it says, this is verse number 3, Al-yawma akmaltu lakum deenakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-islam deena. Today I have perfected your religion for you, completed my favor upon you, and approved Islam as a deen. And deen is basically what we say is a way of life. So this is like an important field that we need to have, that our religion has been completed. This is the most upgraded version. Until the day of judgment, till the last day which we have on earth, no more new upgraded version will be coming. So basically what we have to learn from now onwards is how to apply these principles rather than trying to modify these principles. Then we move down to verse number 6, in which we have been told about the concept of purification. That is, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, iza qumtum ila salah faghsilu. O believers, when you rise up for salah, wash your face and your hands, and as for your elbows. And the whole procedure of this wuzu has been given to us. So basically the concept of cleanliness is very important. And what I find very amazing about performing wuzu is it provides us a spiritual cleansing and at the same time physical cleansing. In hadith we find out that when a believer washes his face in ablution, every sin that he committed with his eyes will be washed away with the last drop of water. When he washes his hand, every sin that he committed with his hand will be washed away with the last drop of water. When he washes his feet, every sin that he committed with his feet will be washed away with the last drop of water until he emerges purified from the sin. So beautiful. Another important hadith says, in which the Prophet ﷺ said If there was a river at your door and he took a bath in it 5 times a day, and would you notice any dirt on him? No, that's what the people said, not a trace of dirt, undoubtedly. Prophet ﷺ said, this is the parable of the 5 prayers by which Allah removes all the sins. So over here, the important concept is performing wudu. And alhamdulillah, all the people who are praying and especially making an extra effort to even get up for tahajjud prayer in the month of Ramadan, what we can do is learn the proper way of doing wudu, this ablution, and at the same time enjoy it. So I have a small clip with me which I'd like you to have a look at so that you can have all the checklist with you that how to perform a wudu. Let's take a look at it.
Let's begin to perform wudu. It is important that you perform the following steps of wudu in order. Step 1. Begin in the name of Allah by saying Bismillah. Step 2. Completely wash the hands, including the wrists and between the fingers 3 times. Step 3. Put water into your mouth using the right hand. Swirl it around in your mouth, then expel. Do this 3 times. Step 4. Sniff water into the nostrils as far as possible with the right hand, and then blow it out using the left hand. Do this 3 times. Step 5. Washing the face from the forehead to the chin, and from the left earlobe to the right earlobe, making sure the whole face is washed. Do this 3 times. The one who has a beard should also run the wet fingers through it. Step 6. Wash the right arm beginning at the fingertips, washing the entire hand and arm up to and including the elbow. Do this 3 times. The same is done for the left arm, beginning at the fingertips, washing the entire hand and arm up to and including the elbow. Do this 3 times. Step 7. Starting at the fringe, moving the hands to the back of the hairline and then back to the fringe all in one movement. This is done once only. Step 8. Wipe the insides of both ears with the index fingers and the back of the ears with the thumbs. This is done only once. Step 9. Wash the right foot including the ankle. Make sure between the toes are also washed using the small pinky finger. Do this 3 times. The same is done for the left foot, washing it up to and including the ankle, ensuring you wash between the toes using the small pinky finger. Do this 3 times. Step 10. It is preferred to seal your wudu with the declaration of faith, saying, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. This means, I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is his slave and messenger. Upon the completion of the steps of wudu, one is now ready to pray as long as they don't nullify the wudu. Actions that nullify wudu. This includes passing urine or feces, passing wind. Other things that nullify wudu include deep sleep, whereby one loses awareness, unconsciousness or intoxication, touching the private parts with the hand and fingers without a barrier, intimate relations between husband and wife. If a person forgets whether they have nullified their wudu or not, then this does not nullify their ablution, regardless of whether the person is praying or not, until they are certain that they have nullified their ablution. Don't forget that you must perform the steps of wudu in order.
So after we have learned about the spiritual cleansing, a lot of verses, they will be repeatedly telling us about the justice system, the justice system. Why? As I told you, remember the background of this surah. This is the time when the Muslims are victorious and Muslims are trying to spread out the message of Islam. And that is what it has been said, that we should be having like Ya ayyuhallazina amanu kunu qawwamina lillahi shuhada bil qist. O believers, be steadfast for the sake of Allah and bear the true witness, and let not the enmity of the people incite you to injustice. Because this is difficult once you are in a status where you can take any kind of decision, and then you are supposed to be doing justice to everyone. Then we move on. And in verse number 20, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again reminds Bani Israel, Musa alayhi salam, his people, about the blessings that he has bestowed upon them. And that we find out that is a repeated kind of a reminder for those people. And then it's talking about, because the people of the Bani Israel, they always went back on their word. And somehow because of that, they developed this apathy towards everything. And so much so that there is a story which comes up after that, which is verse number 27 onwards, which is the story of the first murder in the human history, Habil and Qabil, Cain and Abel. And the story is that they offered a sacrifice, and Allah accepted the sacrifice of one person and was not accept the sacrifice of the other person. And what was the base of acceptance of this sacrifice? That is taqwa. So that is an important thing, that when we're giving out something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or making some actions, or even speaking something, we have to do it solely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ultimately one of them killed the other. And after that we find out toward the verse number 31, it says, for asbaha minan nadimin. That was the time when this the brother, he regretted, and he was full of regrets, and he felt guilty, and it was very difficult for him to then move on. Now, this is very, very important thing to understand over here. We all make mistakes, we all make blunders, we all sometimes sin to a level when we don't even want to utter a word about it, and we feel lost. We want to come back on that right path. So understand this thing, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, come back. If you have regrets, if you want to change your life, if you want to transform, you need to learn about how to let go, how to express your pain, how to stop feeling like a victim, at the same time a victim who has sinned, and focus on the present and try to transform yourself. And then again, there is another important verse, which is verse number 35, in which again the address is to the believers. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu ittaqullah. O believers, have fear of Allah, and wabtaghu ilayhil wasila, and try to seek the means to get closer to him. Wajahidu fi sabilihi la'allakum tuflihun, and make jihad or struggle in his way so that you may be successful. Over here we have been told about seeking the means to get closer to him. Let me give you a couple of lists of all these means. Do some good deed, you'll feel his closeness. Go in sajda, on the ground, put yourself over there, and you will feel his closeness. Quran is a means of getting closer to him. So these are like important means, the wasila through which we can feel that connection with him. The verses move on, and in verse number 38 we find out about if a person is held guilty of theft, then it has been told that cut off his hand. And this is again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, nakalam min Allah. This is an exemplary punishment which is ordained from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the kind of punishment which needs to be given in the public place. We do understand that all over the world people think it's cruel, and they say that these kind of images shouldn't be around. Now let us try to understand, it's not like someone just picks up a food item and the hand is chopped off. There is a whole system which has been developed for that. Islamic laws, whatever are there, they are protecting 6 things for us: our worship, our life, our intellect, our education, our repute, our property, and our lineage. So beautiful. So anything which is going to affect any of these areas, that's where a had, a limit has been set over there. And we have been told that there are certain things, certain sins for which there will be physical kind of a punishment which will be given. And yes, the spiritual punishment is, or the spiritual healing for that is, you start repenting. So in our religion, what we understand is hate the sin, not the sinner. If you are accountable for something, you did something wrong, then you move on after that punishment, and you can still go to on the right path and be on the same path. Then we move on and we find out that the attitude of the people of the book, and especially the people who were experts in the book. What were they doing? Samma'una lil kazib, akkaluna lis suhd. What they did was they listened to the falsehood, and they would eat things which were prohibited. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again warns us over here that these are the things we should be staying away from. So the verses, as they are moving on, we find out that again the warnings have been given to the people of the book then to be on the right path and to do the right things. There is one verse which is verse number 69, which says, Inna allazina amanu wallazina hadu wassa'ibun wannasara man amana billahi wal yawmil akhir wa amila salihan fala khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. If you, no matter the believers and the people who believe in other religions, ultimately whoever believes in Allah and the last day and does righteous deed, then there will be no regret or no fear for him. So end of the day, these are the important messages that we learn over here. And yes, one or two ahadith that I always like to share with you towards the end of the session. The one hadith, since we started talking about the halal and haram in Surah Al-Maida, and inshallah we'll move on and we'll discuss it till we come towards the end of Surah Al-Maida. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, the halal is clear and the haram is clear, and between them are matters which are unclear and are unknown to most people. So whoever is wary of these unclear matters have absolved his religion and honor. So this is an important thing for all of us to remember. And yes, today what we have learned is do not transgress the limits of deen. Our deen is complete. We talked about the first murder and what was the base for that, and what are the different means of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in the month of Ramadan, use all these things, work on your wudu, and also strong connectivity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also try to see that you do not go in any exaggeration, and yes, don't forget to fulfill all your covenants. So this brings us to the end of today. Let's finish off with the dua. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأهل بيته أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.